The alarm cuts through the dormitory before my eyes are even open, and I already know today is going to be worse than yesterday. My name is Mira Voss, and I am the smallest, weakest, most laughed-at cadet in the entire Coalition Fleet Academy. I did not choose this reputation. It chose me the moment I stepped off the transport ship 3 months ago, the only human among 1,000 cadets from a dozen other worlds. I sit up fast, my heart already pounding, because the alarm tone is not the usual wake-up chime. It is the tone for an unscheduled combat trial. Nobody warns us. Nobody explains why. The Academy believes fear teaches faster than comfort, and this morning, fear is already doing its job on me. Around the dormitory, cadets from other species rise without hurry. A Threx warrior named Doran Vek cracks his neck like he is bored. A Zik duelist named Eilith Sorn stretches 4 long arms without even opening both sets of eyes. They move like this is nothing. For them, maybe it is nothing. Their bodies were built for this kind of world, shaped by centuries of harder gravity, faster reflexes, and thicker skin than mine will ever have. I move like someone who has been told, again and again, that she does not belong here. Every corner of this academy has a name for me. The soft one, the slow one, the one who fell out of the sky by mistake. I have heard cadets place bets on which week I will finally quit. I have heard instructors sigh when my name comes up on the roster, as if my presence alone lowers the average score of the room. I pull on my training suit, my hands shaking slightly, not from the cold, but from the memory of every trial I have failed so far. 3 months, and I have not won a single one. Not one. Talia Brooks, the only other cadet who still talks to me without a smirk on her face, catches my eye from across the room. She gives me a small nod, the kind that says I am still here, and so are you. It is not much, but most mornings, it is the only kindness I get. We move together toward the training hall, joining the flow of cadets pouring out of every dormitory wing. The hallways of the academy are built wide and tall, made for bodies twice my size, so that even walking here feels like being a child in a world made for adults. Every step reminds me how small I am compared to everyone else training to defend this galaxy. The training hall doors open onto a deck the size of a small stadium, ringed with observation platforms, where instructors and senior officers already stand waiting. I feel their eyes find me instantly, the way eyes always seem to find the one thing that does not fit. Instructor Ellison stands at the center of the deck, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He is Coalition military, human like me, but hardened by decades of service in a galaxy that trusted our species far less than any other. He has never mocked me openly, but he has never defended me either. Behind him stands Colonel Whitfield, a tall Oswar official, whose 4 calm eyes miss nothing. Oswar officers rarely visit training sessions. Their presence here tells me something unusual is happening today, something bigger than the normal humiliation I expect to endure. Cadets gather in loose formation, whispering, guessing at what this sudden trial might be. I catch fragments of conversation, words like unscheduled and evaluation, and even the phrase full output, which makes my stomach twist without understanding why. Instructor Ellison raises a hand, and the whispering dies instantly. Today, he says, his voice carrying easily across the deck, we conduct the bear trial. A ripple moves through the crowd. Even Doran Vek, who never reacts to anything, straightens slightly. I do not know what the bear trial is, but the reaction around me tells me it is something serious. Ellison continues. The bear trial removes every weapon, every armor plate, every enhancement. You face the deck constructs using nothing but your own body. No shields, no blades, no tools, just what you were born with. My chest tightens. Every other trial, I have at least had equipment to hide behind, some small advantage of technology to make up for what my body lacks. Without that, I am not just the weakest cadet here. I am nothing at all. Why now? Someone asks from the crowd, a Zik cadet whose 4 arms fold in confusion. This trial is normally reserved for senior years. Colonel Whitfield speaks for the first time, her voice smooth and measured. Recent events have moved the schedule forward. The Coalition wishes to understand exactly what this generation of cadets can do, without assistance, without excuse. I do not understand what recent events she means, but I understand the weight in her voice. and I understand that whatever is happening, it involves more than just today's training. Ellison gestures toward the deck floor, and panels begin sliding open along the edges, revealing storage compartments beneath. From these compartments rise the training constructs, tall humanoid shapes built from reinforced alloy, their surfaces dull gray and utterly still until the moment they activate. I have seen these constructs before, always from a distance, always used in trials I was excused from because of safety concerns. Now, watching them rise fully into the light, I realize why. These constructs are rated to withstand direct impacts from Starship-grade tools. They are not built to be defeated easily. They are built to test the absolute limit of what a body can do. And today, I am expected to face one with nothing but my bare hands. Panic rises in my throat, fast and sharp. I glance at Talia, and even she looks pale, her usual calm confidence shaken by the sight of the constructs fully powering on, their eyes glowing faint blue as processors inside them come online. Cadets are called forward one at a time, species after species stepping onto the deck to face their assigned construct. I watch each trial from the sidelines, my nerves stretching tighter with every passing minute. Doran Vex steps up first among our group, his Threx frame rippling with dense muscle built for exactly this kind of combat. He meets his construct without hesitation, exchanging blows that shake the observation platform beneath my feet. He does not win outright, but he lands solid strikes, driving the construct back step by step before the trial ends on the clock. The crowd murmurs approval. This is expected. This is normal. Eilith Sorn follows, moving with four-armed precision, weaving around the construct's attacks with speed that blurs at the edges. He too fails to defeat it completely, but his performance earns nods from the instructors, another expected outcome from another capable species. Then Talia steps up, and my heart clenches with worry for her. She fights well, better than I expected, ducking and countering with sharp focused movements. The construct eventually pins her down, ending her trial, but she rises afterward with her head held high, having done far better than most humans are expected to do. And then Ellison calls my name. Mira Voss. The sound of my own name across that vast deck feels like a physical weight pressing down on my shoulders. I feel every eye in the room shift toward me, feel the whispers begin instantly, feel the quiet laughter that some cadets do not even bother to hide. I walk forward because I have no other choice, my legs carrying me onto the deck floor even as every instinct screams that this will end badly. The construct assigned to me powers on fully, its blue eyes locking onto my position, its systems calibrating to whatever threat level the Academy believes I represent. I catch a glimpse of the readout on the nearby monitor. My threat rating shows the lowest possible number the system allows. Somewhere behind me, someone laughs quietly, and I feel my face burn with humiliation, even before the trial begins. Instructor Ellison studies me for a long moment, and for just a second, I think I see something other than pity in his expression, something closer to curiosity, but it passes quickly, replaced by professional detachment. "Begin," he says. The construct steps forward immediately, closing the distance between us with mechanical precision. I have no plan, no strategy, nothing but raw instinct and desperation pushing me sideways to avoid its first strike. The deck shakes as its arm sweeps through the space where I stood a moment before. I scramble backward, my breathing already ragged, my mind racing to find some way, any way, to survive, even a few seconds longer than expected. The crowd watches in near silence now, the earlier laughter fading into something more like anticipation. Nobody expects me to win, but even they seem curious how long I will last before the inevitable happens. The construct advances again, and I dodge again, barely, my body moving on pure adrenaline, rather than any trained skill. I know I cannot keep this up much longer. My legs are already tiring, my breath already ragged, and the construct shows no sign of slowing down. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a strange thought surfaces, quiet and unexpected. A feeling that something inside me has not yet been tested, something beneath the exhaustion and the fear, something I have never had reason to reach for before. I do not understand it. But as the construct closes in for what I sense will be the final exchange of this trial, that strange feeling rises up inside me, cold and steady, cutting through the panic like a blade through fog. And for the first time since I arrived at this academy, I stop running. The construct's arm swings toward me, fast and heavy, aimed to end the trial in a single decisive motion. Every instinct tells me to dodge again, to keep surviving a few more seconds the way I have all trial long. Instead, I plant my feet. I do not know why. I do not decide to do it, not in any way I can explain afterward. My body simply chooses, faster than thought, faster than fear, and I raise my bare hand to meet the strike head-on. The sound that follows is not the sound I expect. It is not the sound of my arm breaking, not the sound of pain, not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of something ancient and enormous cracking open, deep and resonant, echoing across the entire training hall like a thunderclap trapped underground. For a moment, I do not understand what has happened. My hand still stings faintly, but no worse than a hard clap against another palm. The construct's arm hangs strangely bent where it should not bend, the reinforced alloy visibly deformed from the impact. And beneath us, spreading outward from the point where my hand met the deck floor after the exchange, a crack splits the reinforced surface in two, running the length of the entire arena like a scar cut into solid stone. The silence that follows is unlike anything I have ever experienced. No laughter, no whispers, no sound at all, except the faint hum of the deactivating construct and my own unsteady breathing. I stand there, staring at my hand, at the crack running across the deck, at the stunned faces staring back at me from every direction. Even Doran Vec, who reacts to nothing, stands frozen, with both eyes wide open. Eilith Sorn's forearms hang motionless at his sides. Instructor Ellison steps forward slowly, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and something I cannot quite name. Colonel Whitfield's four eyes fix on me with an intensity that makes my skin prickle. I open my mouth to explain, to apologize, to say something, anything, to fill the silence pressing down on the deck. But no words come, because I do not understand what just happened any better than they do. All I know is that my knuckles do not hurt. All I know is that the crack beneath my feet is real, undeniable, spreading across the training deck, like proof of something none of us were prepared to witness. All I know is that the girl everyone called the joke of the academy just did something no cadet in this room, human or otherwise, has ever done before. And somewhere behind Colonel Whitfield's calm, unreadable expression, I sense the beginning of questions that will follow me, long after I leave this deck today. The training hall does not empty the way it normally does after a trial ends. Cadets linger near the doors, glancing back at the cracked deck, whispering among themselves in tones far quieter than usual. I stand near the center of the arena, still staring at my own hand, as if it belongs to someone else. Instructor Ellison orders the hall cleared within minutes, his voice sharper than I have ever heard it. Cadets file out slowly, throwing glances over their shoulders, some at the crack in the deck, some at me. Talia lingers near the exit, until an officer waves her forward, and even then she looks back twice, before disappearing through the doors. I am left standing alone with Ellison, Colonel Whitfield, and two engineers who arrive within moments, carrying scanning equipment I do not recognize. They move past me without a word, kneeling at the edge of the crack, running devices along its length that beep and hum in patterns I cannot interpret. Colonel Whitfield studies me for a long moment before speaking. "Cadet Voss," she says, her tone calm but firm, "you will remain here until we understand what occurred." I nod because I do not know what else to do. My legs still feel unsteady beneath me, adrenaline draining out of my body and leaving behind a strange hollow feeling, somewhere between relief and confusion. The engineers work for nearly an hour, scanning the deck, scanning the deactivated construct, occasionally glancing toward me, with expressions I cannot read. Ellison stands near me the entire time, arms crossed, saying nothing, though I notice him watching my hands more than once. Finally, one of the engineers approaches Colonel Whitfield, speaking in a low voice I am not meant to hear. I catch only fragments. Structural integrity exceeded. No corresponding energy signature. Impact force inconsistent with recorded output. Whitfield's four eyes shift toward me again, and this time there is something new in her expression, something that makes my skin prickle with unease. Not anger, not suspicion, something closer to careful, deliberate curiosity. "Cadet Voss," she says, You will accompany me. I follow her out of the training hall, leaving Ellison and the engineers behind, my footsteps echoing strangely in the sudden quiet of the corridor. We walk through hallways I have never entered before, deeper into the administrative wing of the academy, past doors marked with symbols I do not recognize. She leads me into a small room, sparse and clinical, with a single table and 2 chairs facing each other. A woman in a lab coat waits inside, standing as we enter. She introduces herself as Dr. Okafor, the Academy's lead xenobiologist, though her tone suggests she has been waiting for this meeting far longer than the hour since my trial ended. Please sit, Dr. Okafor says, gesturing toward the chair across from her. I sit, my hands folded tightly in my lap, still half expecting someone to tell me this has all been some enormous misunderstanding, that the crack in the deck was a malfunction, that none of this actually involves me. Instead, Dr. Okafor slides a small device across the table, a scanner similar to the ones used by the engineers in the training hall. She asks permission before placing it against my wrist, and I nod, too tired and too confused to object. The device hums quietly for a moment, before displaying a series of numbers I do not understand. Dr. Okafor studies the readout with an expression of quiet fascination, glancing between the screen and me several times before finally speaking. Cadet Voss, she says carefully, do you know how the Coalition first assessed human physical capability, when your species joined the Academy program? I shake my head slowly. She continues, her voice measured, almost gentle. Human recruits were tested using standard baseline protocols, the same protocols used for every other species. Controlled environments, restrained output, careful limits, designed to prevent injury during evaluation. I do not understand what she is suggesting, and my confusion must show on my face, because she leans forward slightly, choosing her next words with obvious care. What if those protocols were never designed with your species in mind, she says. What if the numbers we recorded were never your actual limits, but simply the limits of the testing environment itself? The room feels suddenly colder, though nothing around me has changed. I think back to every trial I have failed, every moment I was told I was weaker, slower, softer, than every other cadet in this academy. I think about how none of those failures ever felt like they matched the strange, quiet strength I sometimes sensed underneath my own exhaustion, a feeling I never had reason to question until today. Colonel Whitfield speaks from where she stands near the door, her voice carrying the same careful weight as before. The impact you produced today exceeded every recorded threshold for unarmed human output, by a margin our engineers cannot yet explain. I do not know what to say. My mind keeps circling back to the sound of the deck cracking, the strange calm that settled over me in the instant before I stopped running, the way my hand did not hurt afterward despite everything logic tells me it should have. Dr. Okafor studies me a moment longer before continuing. We would like your permission to conduct further evaluation, she says. Not punishment, not disciplinary action, simply understanding. I hesitate, glancing between her and Colonel Whitfield, feeling the weight of a decision I do not fully understand the consequences of. But some part of me, the same part that stood still instead of running earlier today, tells me that saying no will not stop these questions from being asked. It will only stop me from being part of the answer. I nod slowly. All right, I say quietly. I will cooperate. Over the following days, I am pulled from regular training sessions into private evaluation rooms scattered throughout the Academy's medical and research wings. Dr. Okafor oversees most of these sessions personally, running tests that measure everything from my reflexes to my bone density to the strange, subtle patterns in how my muscles respond under sudden stress. Each session reveals something new, something that quietly reshapes how I understand my own body. My reflexes, once dismissed as merely adequate, actually register faster than several species considered elite in combat evaluation. My bone density, previously recorded as unremarkable, shows structural properties none of the researchers expected. Even my recovery rate after physical exertion outpaces predictions built from years of prior human data. I begin to notice things outside the evaluation rooms as well, small details I never paid attention to before. The way gravity in the Academy's higher training decks, calibrated for heavier alien species, never actually felt as crushing to me as my classmates always described. The way minor injuries during training, always seem to fade faster for me than for cadets from supposedly stronger species. The way I always assumed my quiet endurance was simply stubbornness, never realizing it might be something more. Talia visits me during a rare break between sessions, finding me alone in one of the smaller common areas near the medical wing. She sits across from me, studying my face carefully before speaking. "Everyone is talking about you," she says quietly. "Not the way they used to." I glance up at her, uncertain what to say. I do not know what happened, I admit. I still do not fully understand it. She hesitates before continuing. "Doran Vec asked about you yesterday. Not to mock you. He wanted to know how you generated that much force without any visible enhancement. I do not think anyone has an answer yet." I sit with that information for a long moment, feeling the strange shift happening around me. The way cadets who once dismissed me now watch me with something closer to caution, even curiosity. It does not feel like the victory I might have imagined, back when I dreamed of finally proving myself. It feels heavier than that, more uncertain, edged with a question I am not yet ready to answer. "What if this is bigger than one trial?" I say quietly, almost to myself. Talia does not answer right away. When she finally does, her voice is careful. "Then maybe it is time the whole academy learned something it never expected to learn." I do not respond, but her words stay with me long after she leaves, echoing quietly through every evaluation session that follows, every new discovery about my own body that reshapes what I thought I understood about myself. Somewhere in the depths of the Academy's research wing, engineers continue analyzing the cracked training deck, searching for an explanation that fits within their existing understanding of physical output. But I begin to suspect, quietly and privately, that no existing explanation will ever be enough. Because whatever happened on that deck was never about exceeding a number on a scanner. It was about a question the Coalition never thought to ask, about a species they assumed they already understood, simply because that species arrived without weapons, without enhancements, without anything except quiet, patient bodies that were never truly tested until now. And somewhere in the back of my mind, that same cold, steady feeling that rose up during my trial begins to stir again, patient and quiet, waiting for the next moment it will be needed. 3 weeks after the bear trial, I am summoned to a briefing room I have never entered before, tucked away in a restricted section of the Academy's command wing. Colonel Whitfield waits inside, along with Dr. Okafor and a third figure I do not recognize, a tall Oswar officer introduced simply as Commander Adele. Commander Adele studies me for a long moment before speaking, his 4 eyes moving slowly across my face, as though searching for something hidden beneath my expression. "Cadet Voss," he says, "your case has drawn attention beyond this academy." I feel my stomach tighten at those words. "Beyond the academy," I repeat quietly. Dr. Okafor steps forward, sliding a datapad across the table toward me. On the screen, I see old records, faded and marked with outdated formatting, clearly pulled from some deep archive rarely accessed. "Historical human combat and survival data," she explains. "Records from before your species joined the Coalition officially." I scan the numbers slowly, though much of the terminology is unfamiliar to me. Endurance thresholds under extreme conditions, recovery rates following severe injury, physical output during prolonged conflict, recorded across what the files describe as significant historical engagements on your homeworld. "These numbers were catalogued decades ago," Commander Adele says, "when the Coalition first made contact with your species. They were dismissed at the time, considered exaggerated, or simply incompatible with your species' apparent lack of technological or physical enhancement." I look up at him, confusion mixing with something colder settling in my chest. "Dismissed," I say slowly. "Why?" Colonel Whitfield answers this time, her voice measured and careful. "Because every other species the Coalition has encountered achieves significant physical capability through enhancement, whether biological, mechanical, or technological. Your species arrived with none of these advantages, and so the assumption was made that your baseline capability must be correspondingly modest." I feel something shift inside me as the pieces begin connecting, slow and heavy, like gears grinding into alignment after being still for far too long. "You thought we were weak," I say quietly. because we did not look strong the way you expected strength to look. Commander Adele inclines his head slightly. A reasonable assumption at the time, he admits. One that recent events have called seriously into question. Dr. Okafor leans forward, her expression a mixture of scientific fascination and something almost apologetic. Cadet Voss, the numbers in these archives, the ones dismissed decades ago as exaggeration, they align closely with the readings we recorded during your trial, far more closely than anyone in this room expected. I sit back slowly, absorbing the weight of what she is telling me. All this time, every failed trial, every quiet humiliation, every assumption made about my species and about me personally, all of it was built on a foundation that may have been wrong from the very beginning. I do not understand, I say finally. If these records existed, why was I still tested using standards clearly built for other species? Why did nobody consider that human output might require different evaluation entirely? Commander Adele's expression shifts, something almost like discomfort crossing his features. Bureaucracy, he admits. Convenience, and frankly, Cadet, a reluctance among certain officials to reconsider assumptions that had gone unchallenged for years. Colonel Whitfield speaks again, her tone carrying a weight I have not heard from her before. What you accomplished in that training hall was not an anomaly, Cadet Voss. It was a correction, a long overdue correction to an error the Coalition has carried since your species first arrived. I sit with that thought for a long moment, feeling something settle inside me that I cannot quite name. Not pride exactly, though there is something like it buried underneath. Something closer to clarity, the quiet recognition that everything I believed about my own limitations may have been built on assumptions that were never actually true. Dr. Okafor speaks again, her voice gentler now. We would like to conduct additional trials, Cadet. Controlled ones, this time designed specifically to measure human capability without the constraints of standards built for other species. I hesitate, glancing between the three officers seated across from me, feeling the enormous weight of what they are asking. Why me specifically, I ask. There are other human cadets in this academy. Commander Adele answers plainly. Because you are the only human cadet who has demonstrated capability significantly exceeding even the revised historical estimates. Whatever occurred during your trial, Cadet, it was not merely human. It was something beyond even our updated understanding of your species' baseline. The words settle over me slowly, heavy and strange. I think back to that moment on the training deck, the cold, steady feeling that rose up inside me the instant before I stopped running, the calm that overtook the panic just before my hand met the construct's strike. I still do not understand where that feeling came from, or why it chose that exact moment to surface. I agree to the additional trials, though something in my chest tightens with uncertainty as I do. Over the following days, I am moved into a specialized training facility, separate from the main academy grounds, a quiet, secure building, reserved for research purposes I am only partially informed about. The trials here are different from anything I experienced before. Instead of standard combat simulations, I am tested using calibrated resistance systems, careful incremental increases in force and pressure, designed to map my actual limits, rather than compare me against some predetermined standard built for other species. Dr. Okafor oversees each session personally, her expression shifting from careful professionalism to something closer to genuine astonishment as the data accumulates. Cadet Voss, she says during one session, studying a readout with visible surprise. Your output, under calibrated resistance, continues increasing well beyond the point where other species typically plateau. I do not fully understand the technical details, but I understand the pattern forming around me, the quiet, growing recognition among everyone involved that whatever I demonstrated during the bear trial was not some isolated incident, but a genuine and significant characteristic of my species that the Coalition simply failed to properly measure until now. During one particularly intense session, I am asked to perform a controlled strike against a reinforced testing surface, similar to the deck construct from my original trial, but instrumented with sensors, designed to measure exact output down to precise scientific detail. I stand before the surface, feeling the same strange calm settle over me that I felt weeks earlier, the cold clarity that seems to arrive only when circumstances demand it. I strike once, carefully, deliberately, and the sensors record numbers that cause Dr. Okafor to fall silent for a long moment, staring at the readout with an expression I cannot fully interpret. "Cadet Voss," she finally says, quietly. "These numbers exceed even our revised projections by a significant margin." I do not know what to say, so I say nothing, standing quietly as the researchers around me exchange glances, heavy with implications none of them seem ready to voice aloud. Later that evening, alone in the small quarters assigned to me within the research facility, I sit by the window, looking out over the academy grounds in the distance, its lights glittering faintly against the darkening sky. I think about everything I have learned over these past weeks, the quiet reshaping of everything I once believed about myself and about my species. I think about every moment I was told I was weak, every quiet humiliation, every dismissive glance from cadets and instructors, who assumed my species simply lacked what theirs possessed in abundance. And I think about the strange, cold clarity that rose up inside me on that training deck, the moment I stopped running and simply stood still, meeting the strike head-on instead of fleeing from it. I do not yet understand everything happening around me, the full scope of what my capability might mean, or why it took so long for anyone to properly measure it. But I understand, with growing certainty, that something fundamental has shifted, not just in how others see me, but in how I am beginning to see myself. And somewhere deep within me, quiet and patient, that same cold clarity continues to stir, waiting for whatever comes next. Word of the additional trials does not stay contained within the research facility for long. By the time I return to the main academy grounds 2 weeks later, the atmosphere around me has changed in ways I could never have predicted. Cadets who once avoided eye contact now watch me openly as I walk through the corridors, their expressions ranging from cautious curiosity to something closer to quiet wariness. The whispers have not stopped, but their tone has shifted entirely, no longer carrying the edge of mockery I grew used to during my first months here. Talia meets me at the entrance to the dormitory wing, her expression a mixture of relief and barely contained excitement. "You would not believe what has been happening while you were gone," she says, falling into step beside me as I make my way toward my quarters. I raise an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. "The instructors pulled every historical record they could find," she explains, "not just for you specifically, but for the entire species. Old survival data, endurance records, physical output during past conflicts on your homeworld, all of it dismissed for years as incomplete or exaggerated." I nod slowly, remembering the archive Dr. Okafor showed me weeks earlier, the faded records that aligned so closely with the numbers recorded during my trial. Talia continues, her voice lowering slightly as we walk. "Doran Vec has been asking questions in every training session since word spread. Not mocking questions, real ones. He wants to understand how your species could have been so drastically underestimated for so long." I consider her words carefully before responding. "Maybe it is not that complicated," I say. "Maybe every other species arrived here already knowing what they were capable of, already having tested their own limits through generations of enhancement and adaptation. We never had that. We never needed weapons or augmentation to survive whatever our homeworld demanded of us. So nobody ever properly tested what we could do without those things, including us." Talia considers this for a long moment before nodding slowly. "That is going to change now," she says quietly, "whether the coalition is ready for it or not." Over the following days, the shift within the academy becomes impossible to ignore. Instructors begin incorporating revised evaluation standards into training sessions, careful new protocols designed specifically to account for human physical capability without relying on comparisons to other species' baselines. I am asked to participate in several of these revised evaluations, watched closely by instructors and researchers alike as I perform tasks calibrated to measure my actual output, rather than my performance against standards clearly mismatched to my species from the very beginning. During one such session, Instructor Ellison approaches me privately after the other cadets have been dismissed. He studies me for a long moment before speaking, his expression carrying a weight I have not seen from him before. "Cadet Voss," he says quietly, "I owe you an apology." I blink, surprised by the sudden shift in his tone. "Sir," I say carefully, "you do not need to apologize." He shakes his head firmly. "I have overseen human cadets for years," he says. "I assumed, like everyone else, that the numbers we recorded reflected your actual limits. I never questioned whether the testing itself might be the flaw, rather than the cadets being tested. I do not know how to respond, so I remain quiet, letting him continue. Whatever you demonstrated on that deck, he says, it deserved to be discovered far sooner than it was. I regret that it took an accident, rather than proper evaluation, to reveal it. His words settle over me slowly, and for the first time since arriving at this academy, I feel something close to genuine respect radiating from an instructor who once looked at me with quiet disappointment. "Thank you, sir," I say quietly, and he nods once before returning to his duties, leaving me alone with thoughts I am still struggling to fully process. Not everyone within the academy responds to these revelations with the same grace. During a shared meal in the dining hall several days later, I overhear a group of Zik cadets discussing the situation, in tones far less generous than Ellison's private apology. "It is a fluke," one of them insists, his forearms crossed tightly across his chest. "A single anomaly does not rewrite decades of established data." Another cadet, a Threx warrior I do not recognize, shakes his head slowly. "The additional trials confirm the readings," he counters. "This is not a fluke. This is a species we fundamentally misunderstood." The first cadet scoffs, glancing briefly in my direction before lowering his voice, though not quite enough to prevent me from hearing his next words clearly. Misunderstood or not, one cadet with unusual output does not mean an entire species suddenly deserves reconsideration. I feel a familiar heat rise in my chest, the old, tired anger of being dismissed and underestimated once again, even in the face of clear evidence. But this time, the anger settles differently, tempered by the quiet, cold clarity I have come to recognize within myself over these past weeks. I do not confront the cadet directly. Instead, I finish my meal calmly, aware that whatever doubts remain among certain cadets and officials, the data collected during my trials speaks for itself, regardless of how reluctant some are to accept it. Later that evening, Colonel Whitfield summons me once again to the same briefing room where Commander Adele first explained the historical significance of my trial results. This time, however, the room holds several additional officials I do not recognize, their expressions serious and focused as I enter. "Cadet Voss," Colonel Whitfield begins. "Please sit." I take my seat, glancing briefly at the unfamiliar officials seated around the table, sensing immediately that this meeting carries weight beyond anything I have experienced so far. Commander Adele speaks next, his tone measured and formal. "Cadet Voss, following the results of your evaluation, the Coalition Fleet Command has authorized a full reassessment of human physical capability standards across all branches of service." I absorb this information slowly, understanding the enormous scope of what he is describing. This is not simply about my own trial results anymore. This affects every human serving within the Coalition, every human cadet training within this academy, every assumption ever made about my species since our first contact with the Coalition decades ago. Dr. Okafor speaks next, her voice carrying a mixture of professional excitement and genuine gravity. "Your case, Cadet Voss, has become the foundation for a complete reevaluation of how the Coalition assesses human recruits going forward." I feel the weight of this responsibility settle heavily across my shoulders, though beneath that weight, something else stirs as well, quiet and steady, the same cold clarity that carried me through my original trial weeks earlier. "I understand," I say quietly, meeting each official's gaze in turn. "What happens next?" Colonel Whitfield leans forward slightly, her four eyes studying me with careful consideration. "What happens next, Cadet Voss, is that the galaxy begins learning what your species is truly capable of, whether it is ready for that knowledge or not." I nod slowly, absorbing the full weight of her words, understanding that whatever quiet, private challenges I have faced during these past weeks were merely the beginning of something far larger than myself, something that will reshape how an entire galaxy views the smallest, quietest species among its ranks. And somewhere deep within me, patient and steady, that same cold clarity continues to grow, no longer content simply to wait quietly in the background, but beginning, slowly and carefully, to rise toward whatever comes next. The following month brings changes to the Academy that I never could have imagined during my first quiet, humiliating weeks here. Word of the reassessment spreads far beyond our training grounds, reaching other Academy branches scattered across Coalition space, and eventually, reaching the wider public consciousness of the galaxy itself. I am called once more into a briefing room, though this time the room is larger, filled with officials representing branches of the Coalition I did not know existed until now. Commander Adele stands at the front, addressing not just me, but a small group of human cadets gathered from across different Academy locations, brought together for reasons I am only beginning to understand. Cadets, he begins, addressing the group with unusual formality. What began as a single unexplained incident has now become a matter of significant importance across the entire Coalition. I glance around at the other human cadets gathered here, recognizing none of them personally, though I sense in their expressions the same mixture of confusion and cautious curiosity that I felt during my own early evaluations. Dr. Okafor steps forward next, addressing the group with the same careful precision she showed during my private sessions weeks earlier. Following Cadet Voss's original trial, she explains, historical records regarding human physical capability were re-examined in full detail for the first time since your species joined the Coalition. She gestures toward a large display screen, where old records begin scrolling past, similar to the ones she showed me privately weeks earlier, though now presented publicly to this entire gathered group. Survival data, endurance records, historical accounts of physical output during extreme circumstances on your homeworld, all originally dismissed as exaggerated, now confirmed through careful reevaluation. A quiet murmur spreads through the gathered cadets as they absorb this information, many of them clearly hearing these details for the first time. I remember my own reaction weeks earlier, the slow, heavy realization that everything I believed about my species' limitations may have been built on assumptions that were simply, fundamentally wrong. Commander Adele continues, his tone carrying a gravity I recognize from our previous meeting. This reevaluation extends beyond simple curiosity, he explains. Coalition Fleet Command has authorized the development of updated training protocols specifically designed to properly measure and develop human physical capability going forward. I feel a strange mixture of pride and unease settle over me as I listen, understanding that this moment marks a genuine turning point, not just for myself, but for every human serving within Coalition ranks going forward. Following the meeting, I am approached by several of the other gathered cadets, their expressions curious rather than hostile, eager to understand more about the trial that started this entire chain of events. One cadet, a quiet young man named Ethan Marsh, hangs back after the others disperse, studying me carefully before speaking. "Is it true," he asks quietly, "that you did not even realize what you were capable of until that moment on the deck?" I consider his question carefully before answering. I did not know, I admit. I do not think any of us really knew. Not fully. We were always measured against standards built for other species, and we accepted those measurements because nobody, including ourselves, thought to question them. Ethan nods slowly, absorbing this information. "Do you think there are others like you?" he asks. "Cadets who could demonstrate similar capability, if given the chance to be properly tested?" I hesitate before responding, considering the question honestly. I do not know, I admit, but I think it is worth finding out. Over the following weeks, updated evaluation protocols begin rolling out across every Academy location within Coalition space. Human cadets who previously scored poorly, under standards built for other species, begin demonstrating capability far beyond what anyone expected, myself included. Talia, in particular, surprises everyone during one of the revised trials, demonstrating output significantly higher than her original scores under the old evaluation standards. She finds me afterward, practically glowing with quiet vindication. "Did you see the numbers?" she asks eagerly. I always felt like something was off about the old trials, like they never quite captured what I actually felt capable of. I smile, genuinely pleased for her. "I think a lot of us felt that way," I say. "We just never had the chance to prove it properly. Until now." Not every reaction across the wider coalition remains positive, however. During a public briefing broadcast across several Academy locations, I watch alongside other cadets as officials from various species voice their concerns regarding the implications of these revised assessments. If human capability has been fundamentally underestimated for decades, one official argues during the broadcast, then every strategic assumption built around human involvement in coalition operations requires immediate reconsideration. Another official, a Zik representative, expresses more direct unease. An entire species previously considered among the weakest in the coalition, suddenly demonstrating capability rivaling or exceeding established combat species, he says carefully, represents a significant shift in galactic power balance that cannot be taken lightly. I listen to these discussions with a strange, complicated mixture of emotions. Part of me understands their concern, recognizing that any significant shift in perceived capability naturally raises questions about broader implications across an entire galaxy, built around careful, established hierarchies. But another part of me, the same quiet, steady part that carried me through my original trial months earlier, feels something closer to quiet resolve. We were never actually weak, I remind myself during these broadcasts. We were simply never properly tested, never given reason to discover what we were truly capable of, until circumstance forced the question upon us. Colonel Whitfield addresses these concerns directly during a private meeting several days later, her expression carrying the same measured calm I have come to associate with her leadership. "Cadet Voss," she says, "the coalition will need representatives capable of addressing these concerns publicly, cadets who can speak honestly about what this discovery means, both for your species and for the broader galaxy." I consider her words carefully before responding. "What exactly are you asking of me, Colonel?" She meets my gaze steadily. "We would like you to participate in an upcoming coalition assembly," she explains, "a gathering of representatives from every member species, where these findings will be presented and discussed formally for the first time." I feel the weight of this request settle heavily across my shoulders, understanding the enormous significance of what she is asking. This is no longer simply about my own personal journey through the academy. This is about representing my entire species before a gathering that will shape how the wider galaxy perceives humanity going forward. "I will do it," I say quietly, meeting her gaze with steady resolve. Colonel Whitfield nods once, satisfied. "Good," she says, "because whatever happens at that assembly, Cadet Voss, will shape how this galaxy understands your species for generations to come." I leave the meeting with a strange, heavy weight settling over my shoulders, though beneath that weight, the same cold, steady clarity continues to grow within me, patient and certain, preparing itself for whatever challenges lie ahead. And somewhere across coalition space, I sense that countless other human cadets are beginning to feel that same quiet clarity, stirring within themselves as well, ready, at last, to discover exactly what our species has always been capable of. The Coalition Assembly Hall is unlike anything I have ever stood inside before, a vast circular chamber ringed with seating for representatives from every member species scattered across this galaxy. I stand at the center podium, my legs steady despite the enormous weight of the moment pressing down on me. Colonel Whitfield sits among the human delegation nearby, along with Dr. Okafor and several other officials who guided me through these past months of discovery. Talia sits among a small group of fellow cadets, invited to witness this assembly, her expression carrying quiet encouragement as our eyes meet briefly across the vast chamber. I take a slow breath, gathering my thoughts before addressing the gathered representatives. "Months ago," I begin, my voice carrying clearly through the chamber's amplification systems, "I was considered the weakest cadet in my entire academy class. I failed every trial I attempted. I was mocked, dismissed, and quietly expected to fail out of the program entirely." The chamber remains silent, every representative listening intently as I continue. During a routine unarmed combat trial, I say, I did something nobody expected, including myself. I cracked a reinforced training deck in two using nothing but my bare hand. A quiet murmur ripples through the gathered representatives, though I continue before it can grow into distraction. That moment revealed something the coalition never properly understood about my species, I explain. Not because we were secretly hiding some hidden strength, but because we were never properly tested in the first place. Every evaluation standard applied to human recruits was built for species that achieved capability through enhancement, technology, or biological adaptation accumulated over generations. My species never had those things. We simply survived, generation after generation, using nothing but our own bodies and our own determination. I glance around the chamber, meeting the gazes of representatives from a dozen different species. each watching me with varying degrees of curiosity, skepticism, or quiet concern. I understand that this discovery raises questions, I continue. Questions about what this means for the balance of power across the coalition, about what other assumptions might require reconsideration, about what an entire species previously dismissed as weak might actually be capable of, once properly understood. I pause, gathering my final thoughts before concluding. But I want to be clear about something, I say, my voice steady and calm. This discovery does not represent a threat to this coalition. It represents an opportunity, a chance to properly understand and integrate a species that has quietly served alongside all of you for years, without ever receiving proper credit for what we were truly capable of contributing. The chamber remains quiet for a long moment after I finish speaking, representatives exchanging glances across the vast circular space. Finally, Commander Adele rises from his seat among the assembled officials, addressing the chamber directly. Cadet Voss speaks honestly, he says, his voice carrying clearly across the chamber. The coalition has built its understanding of strength around visible enhancement, around technology, and augmentation accumulated over generations. We failed to consider that strength might also exist in a species that achieved capability through nothing more than patient, quiet resilience. A representative from the Threx delegation rises next, his expression thoughtful rather than hostile. Perhaps, he says slowly, this is an opportunity for all of us to reconsider how we measure capability more broadly, not simply for humans, but for every species within this coalition. Murmurs of agreement spread through portions of the chamber, though I notice several representatives remaining quiet, their expressions carefully neutral, clearly still processing the broader implications of what has been revealed today. After the assembly concludes, I am approached by numerous representatives eager to discuss the implications of these findings further. Doran Vec, who traveled with a delegation from his own academy branch to witness this assembly, finds me near the chamber's exit, his expression carrying genuine respect rather than the dismissive curiosity I once associated with him. Cadet Voss, he says, extending a hand toward me in a gesture of formal respect. I believe I owe you an apology, and perhaps something closer to genuine admiration. I shake his offered hand firmly, meeting his gaze steadily. Thank you, I say quietly, though I think we still have much to learn about what this discovery truly means, for both our species. He nods slowly. Perhaps, he agrees, but I suspect this galaxy will never view your species quite the same way again. Weeks after the assembly, I return to the Academy grounds, finding an atmosphere completely transformed from the one I first arrived within nearly a year earlier. Human cadets are no longer dismissed or mocked, their trials watched with genuine curiosity, rather than quiet condescension. Updated evaluation protocols continue rolling out across every branch, revealing capability among human recruits that continues to surprise researchers and officials alike. I stand once more on the same training deck where everything began, the crack from my original trial still visible along the reinforced flooring, left deliberately unrepaired as a quiet reminder of the moment that changed everything. Talia joins me, studying the crack alongside me in comfortable silence. Do you ever think about what would have happened, she asks quietly, if you had simply kept running that day, instead of standing still? I consider her question carefully before responding. I think eventually, someone else would have discovered the same thing, I say honestly. But I am glad it happened when it did, and I am glad I was the one who finally stopped running long enough to find out what I was truly capable of. She smiles, nodding slowly in understanding. In the distance, beyond the Academy grounds, I catch sight of a large vessel descending slowly toward a nearby docking platform, its hull marked with insignia I do not immediately recognize. Talia follows my gaze, her expression shifting to quiet curiosity. New arrival? She asks. I watch the vessel continue its careful descent, sensing somehow that its arrival marks the beginning of something even larger than what has already unfolded these past months. I do not know yet what that ship represents, or what its presence here means for the wider coalition. But I sense, with quiet certainty, that whatever comes next will only continue revealing exactly how much this galaxy still has left to learn about the quiet, patient species it once dismissed as the weakest among its ranks. I do not know it yet, standing there on that training deck beside Talia, watching that unfamiliar vessel complete its descent. But somewhere within Coalition space, the first fully crewed human vessel is being prepared for deployment, carrying cadets and officers alike, who have finally discovered exactly what their species has always been capable of. And I suspect, quietly and with growing certainty, that this galaxy has absolutely no idea what it has just awakened.